incredible StutterFest. And of course, I'm just getting on, so I'm just warming up. But you may have a feeling, you may have excitement, you may have exhaustion, you may have curiosity, you may have anxieties. So I'd love everybody to just take a personal check, personal inventory. You don't have to share. If you want to, you could put it in the chat. But it is an exercise we started doing internally, and we do it in the Transcending Stuttering SLP cohorts. And I think it's really helpful just to get a sense of ourselves and also a sense of each other. So if you'd like to drop it in the chat, great. If you want to keep it to yourself, that's fine. But the key here is it's often more than one feeling that we have at the same time. So I am tired and I am excited. I'll just lead with that. If anyone wants to drop anything in the chat or even come off mute, that's totally cool. Lucy, thank you for sharing gratitude and sadness. Gratefulness and freedom, Phyllis, thanks. Donated from New Zealand, right, Phyllis? Beautiful. Tired and numb bum. That's a great phrase. Jennifer, feeling belonging and excited. That's beautiful. Maya, excited and family. Jean-Franco Leblanc, very busy day. I hope I didn't butcher that. I'm used to people butchering my name all the time.
Jean-François.
Very busy.
But it's fine.
Okay. Thank you. I'll accept URI also. I also go with URI, but I'll accept all variations. I'll do my best to pronounce your name best. Very busy day. Yeah, great. Jess, motivated and excited. All right. Jess has the advantage of being on Pacific time. Robert, tired and motivated. Tired, if I'm not mistaken, Robert, you're also on Pacific, so maybe get whatever Jess had for breakfast. And Steph is just straight up happy. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So I'm just going to record here for myself. Tom, can you give me the co-hosting ability just so I can do a local recording? While we're getting that, if anyone else wants to drop anything else in. Patty, good to see you. Tired and curious. Pamela, just straight up tired. All right. Legit. Tom, are you there? Or Marvin? Supposed to be able to record. Just wanted to. Tom, Marvin. All right, we'll do one more thing here as we're waiting for that. And any techniques to release stuttering, Max? Not going to go into depth in that, but I definitely want to make sure that you know that there's a place you can get some more on that. Okay, but I'm not going to be including that in the presentation, but I will give you an address during the presentation where you can go. Oh, okay, Steph, thank you for that. So here's one more thing that my good friend Mo Mernick, who's also a person who stutters, showed me. Since we have a couple tired folks, if you're in the position, you can just raise your hand there. Do that. It's a little higher. That's the secret right there. We got to push a little bit harder. We got to go a little bit further. We got to see what we did yesterday and see how we can do a little bit more today. We got to see what's great in the stuttering community and in the world, and we got to see what we can do to just move it forward just another inch. I'm going to go back to the main room for one moment. They asked me to do that so that they can open this up, and I will be right back. Okay, we're back. Awesome. So tonight we're going to talk about, there's going to be two parts to this talk. I guess for Phyllis it's early morning, for others it might be morning as well, for others it's late in the evening. Um, the first thing I'll talk about is what I was supposed to talk about at midnight, but we got moved up a little bit. And then we'll talk about the podcast. And I welcome all of your questions and comments. And I'll also try not to stretch things out. So for those of you that want to kind of enjoy this and then tuck in, I'll try to be as succinct as I possibly can. But I'm really excited to be here. And so the first piece of my comments will be related to how the future of stuttering therapy and stuttering community, the future is flat. And what I mean by that, the idea of accessibility and the idea of a connected planet and what that means for future possibilities of connecting us to one another and also creating more possibilities. And Max, I'm thinking of you as you're looking for techniques or suggestions, which you definitely deserve to find. I first want to start by thanking Tom and Trisha and Marvin and this incredible team at the World Stuttering Network. Really incredible. I can totally just channel back Tom's energy. I remember in episode number 12, I interviewed Tom, and at the time he was announcing this idea of the World Stuttering Network, and look at what it's become. It's absolutely amazing. So I want to thank you guys at the leadership. And I want to thank each of you that are looking at this, looking at me present right now or listening later. I want to thank you for welcoming me in. I want to thank you for giving me a space and give me grace to be party to this amazing community, and also to be able to contribute all that I can together with you. I'm reminded of a comment from Jean Jordan. She commented about transcending stuttering. The following quote from JFK, she said, "The rising tides will raise all boats." And I really feel that what the World Stuttering Network is doing, and the spirit that I try to bring, is that if we can really create goodness in the water around that iceberg, if we can think about ways we can just bring more light into the world that we live in our smaller home and intimate family, in the school or in the workplace, and then of course in our greater communities, be they local, national, international, global, galactic, if we could just bring that much more goodness, everyone rises. And I think there were some shares earlier today about, I think Maya, I caught, doing this press release on the footsteps of the city hall in San Francisco, and all of a sudden a council person suddenly feels a sense of identity and a sense of, wow, I didn't realize there were people out there making community and making space for people who stutter. And I have that countless times. And so I think it behooves all of us to recognize that on Stuttering Awareness Week, and always, it's not just for us. So if you're a person who stutters, or if you're a speech language pathologist, if you're inclined to bring about more advocacy for your own self, that's wonderful. And if you don't feel it, know that you might be blazing a trail and opening a door for someone else who isn't in the position to even know that they need to do that, or isn't in the position of courage to take that step. So if you're not doing it for yourself, you might be doing it for someone else. Just a little bit of self-advocacy right there, a little openness. I'm dealing with an allergy, and I will be contending with these uninvited, unwanted interruptions in the flow of my speech, and it's authentic and it's real, and it's annoying, and I really wish it wasn't there, and I did a couple things to try to prevent it acting up. I've got a bottle of, I don't know how many ounces of ice. At the same time, it is what it is. We're going to roll with it. But if I put myself on mute, it's really just to spare your eardrums the barking cough. Okay, so that's it for the thank yous. That's it for the rising tide. Let's get to the meat of what we're going to talk about. First of all, disclosure again, I don't stutter. And yet, here I am at this ridiculous hour in solidarity, and also a bit more than that, I'm really here to share what keeps me up at night, what bothers me, what concerns me, what jazzes me up, and maybe it's what bothers you too. And I'll share my humble thoughts about what I think we can do about it, what we can do to bring more light, to rise that tide just a few more inches. The words accessibility, inclusion, person-centered care, lifespan perspective, 4 terms. They're extremely trendy. For me, it's not trendy, and they're not catchphrases, and they're not cliche. It's in my blood. I'm going to share with you some stuff that I've never shared before uh, about why I'm so passionate about these things. Why, for me, it's so visceral. It's not like something I read in a book or something I see trending on Twitter that I think I need to start talking about to get more follows. That's not at all what drives me. And more importantly than why it matters to me, why it matters for all of us, and then maybe I'll share a vision for the future and invite you to join me as we build it together. Now, the goal in my mind, the goal very clear, very simple, very short. Make it easier for people who stutter to be themselves and to do really well in real life. To make it easier, it's got to be easy. It's got to be easy, and it's got to be able to be yourself in your own skin. And it's got to be also something that translates not only into these safe spaces and into a conference or into a support meeting or into a therapy room, but it's got to also be to do really well in real life. Okay? I think that's the goal. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name is URI SCHNEIDER. I know Tom gave me a short intro. But I think I need to share with you is Maya definitely is crushing it. And I recommend all of the people here, and I think Mark is here also. So you've got Stutter Proud, you've got Stutter Proudly, you've got Proud Stutter, you've got the World Stuttering Network, you've got many, many wonderful podcasts, and many of them have achieved things that I haven't yet achieved, and many of them have contributed things that I can't contribute. But I also think that each of us has something to contribute, so I keep at it. And we do have tens of thousands of downloads. But really, it's not about the downloads. It's been an honor and a privilege for me. It's a playground of learning, research, and development. And what I'm really excited about is a growing library of true stories, of lived experiences, of insights, and tips from people who stutter, as well as a window into the latest research and clinical mastery. I thought about today, it's 24 hours to StutterFest. Cheers. It's 24 hours. 72 episodes into Transcending Stuttering, the podcast. That's like 3 days. You could sit and binge listen if you're ready to do that. I don't recommend it because some of them are even more than an hour. But I would be privileged if you would listen and if you feel inclined to offer some feedback, what you liked, what you'd like to hear more of. If you would feel inclined to subscribe and drop a review, that's awesome. So Transcending Stuttering, it's on every podcast platform, and I will drop the link, or maybe Steph or Jessica, somebody, transcendingx.com/podcast. That's the new destination to get it all straight on the web, but I'll put more links in a little bit later. In addition to the podcast, so some people just know me as the podcast guy, I also have a private practice, Schneider Speech, where we lead a team of therapists, and we see over 200 people a year who stutter, online and in person. That gives us a lot of opportunities to learn, a lot of opportunities to listen, and a lot of perspective in terms of the variability of stuttering and the variability and variety of people who stutter. So as much as there are different types of stutters, there are also different types of people. If you are not on mute, please just mute yourself. Thank you. I think we got everybody. So I think the practice also is a place where obviously we're able to service people, to help people. That is a fee for service. And it's always bothered me and concerned me, and I think this is my first concern. Not everybody can afford that fee. Not everybody can get to us, whether it's state licensing issues, whether it's physical distance, whether it's a language barrier. That's something that concerns me always. And so transcending stuttering is very much the birth of a solution that I feel levels the field and kind of creates more flat access for people. And it also creates a two-way street for both professionals and people who stutter to contribute to a shared fund of wisdom and a shared fund of access for people to find their way and to figure out what works for them. So our private practice is certainly something that I'm very proud of, but it's also something I'm aware is limited in terms of how many people we can help and also how many people can access that kind of help, and that we need to come up with better solutions because there's too many people that are not able to access the support that they're seeking. I'm also part of a research team at UC Riverside with Dr. McGuire and Scott Yaris and Shelley Joe, and others. So looking at psychopharmacology, epigenetics, brain imaging, diagnostics, evidence-based therapy practices. So I just think sometimes you find yourself pigeonholed in one arena. So I'm not just the podcast guy. I enjoy and I'm informed by my conversations with the people we work with in the office, the young people, the parents, the teens and the adults, as much as I'm informed by the greatest academics and researchers in the world, as much as I'm informed by every single podcast guest and every single podcast that I listen to. And I consume and listen to many other podcasts. I actually find it painful to listen to my own, but I find it extremely enriching not to get stuck in this single story. So I think just one takeaway, by the way, not to get stuck in a single story. All of us live an amazing life, a life that's worth writing a book about. At the same time, it will enrich all of us to see ourselves through other people's eyes. So communicating with others, whether it's in these rooms like this, and just understanding that the way we see ourselves might not be the way other people see us. There's often a lot of good that we don't see in ourselves that others can shed light on. And there's also a lot to be said for, I have been solving this problem this way. In some ways it's working for me. In some ways I'm not so happy about it. I want to find a better way. I might not figure out a better way, but by listening to other people's stories through all the wonderful podcasts that are available, through videos online and so on, and by talking to other people perhaps. But if you're not ready to talk to people, that's the beauty of the podcast. You can do it in complete anonymity and complete privacy from wherever you are. So just recognizing getting out of our own heads and recognizing that there's no stuttering truth. No one owns the truth on the stuttering experience. But when we listen to many stories, we start to get the multi-dimensional 360 degrees of what this is all about. And we realize how much overlap and how much we share in this experience. I'm speaking in the collective we. Again, I don't stutter, and I'm not suggesting that I should in any way hijack that experience. And at the same time, there's a piece of stuttering that when I meet somebody and when I speak with each of you with the utmost respect, I somehow relate to it. I somehow relate to it at a human level. So when I say we, I'm just saying it in that way, not to suggest that I understand stuttering, because I don't, but I'm learning and I'm listening and I'm trying. I think I'm getting smarter day by day. So that's what I do and that's who I am. So now a little bit of a surprise, a joke. It's a little bit edgy. I'm going to see how it goes, but I really think it frames everything that I was saying before. Because I'm thinking about the people that have opportunity and privilege, people that have found this room, for example. You are 21 people. I popped into a few rooms today. I don't know what the most numbers were. I hope that Trisha and Tom and Marvin and the team recognize what an amazing success it is. But let's not kid ourselves. How many millions of people who stutter didn't find this room? That bothers me. That concerns me. How many millions of those people are feeling lonely? How many of those millions of people are looking, as Max was asking, have you got any techniques for me? Now, I think Max was asking about speech techniques, but how many people are looking for just self-care? I just want to feel better. I just want to feel okay. I sit at the table every day, and my mother, my father, they're not very gentle. They're not very kind. And they haven't found a space like this. How many millions of people? That concerns me. So the joke is like this. There was a Hispanic fireman, and he had twins. What did he name his twins? Anyone know this one? What did he name his twins? He named his twins Jose and Joseby. I think that's good. Jose and Joseby. So in Spanish, Jose is like a pretty common name. He was a fireman, Jose and Joseby. You're going to remember that joke, and I hope everyone felt it was in bounds. I think it's okay. It's really a linguistic play. What I want to highlight is there's two paths we can go down in life. There's path A and there's path B. It's like those television shows. Do you like to open door number 1 or door number 2? So I'm thinking about all of you. I'm sort of preaching to the choir over here. You are those who chose to open door number 2. How many people are still choosing door number 1 because it's more familiar? It's more safe. It's the only one they can reach. It's the only one they know. They don't yet have the courage. They don't yet have the reach. No one's really invited them to open that door. No one suggested what might be on the other side of that door. But they're living a life that's very safe, but very stagnant. And they have this unresolved longing for something more. But either they haven't seen the door, they can't reach the door, or they don't have the courage to open that door. And so I think of Jose and Joseby, just to frame this whole thing as a takeaway. I want to make sure that every person on the planet who stutters has the opportunity to open the door they choose to open, and that they know there are doors, that they know there are choices. I don't think everybody is going to respond to any one solution. I don't think everybody at every stage of their life needs the same solution that think about yourself. Thank you. When that happens, if you just hang in, it's worth the wait. I learned that from somebody. Thanks. If you just recognize, like, there's so many people that don't even know there's another door. And that's what I stay up at night about, is trying to figure out how can we show people another way without pushing them to do it. And what I was going to say was, how many of you that are here today would have been here at the age of 12? You know, how many of you, something you can hear me say today that might resonate, if I had said that to you at the age of 15, you would have quickly turned off the screen, shut the thing, and gone to sleep. At different stage, the same person at different stages of life, of maturity, of development, is ready to do certain things, is ready to not do other things, and that changes over time. It's not uncommon that a 12, 13-year-old is ready to kvetch, to borrow some of Tom's Yiddish. He's ready to kvetch, but he's not necessarily ready to discipline himself into doing anything about it, not in terms of behavioral shifts in his speech, and not in terms of self-acceptance. But there's a lot of pain to be shared, and I'll share with you a little bit about that. And on the flip side, there's things that a 21-year-old is ready to do, that they're ready to make change, they're ready to do some things differently, they're ready to put themselves out there, given some tools, and get out there and interview and socialize and date and try to do things they hadn't done before. And they might not need as much of the kvetching space. They're ready to move, and this has to do with what we know about the stages of change and so on. So my point is, we got to meet people where they're at, and we got to think about a solution that kind of helps different types of people, but also helps different people at different stages of their life based on what they need at that time. So that's Jose and Joseby. Here's the part of my story that most of you don't know, and why this is all, to say another Yiddish word, it's in my kishkas. Anybody need a translation of kishkas? Kishkas is like, it's in your gut. It's in your gut. This whole activist spirit, where does this come from for me? So there's just backstory. Again, I don't think I've ever shared it. Many of you may know my father, my teacher, my partner, my professor, grandmaster, the GOAT, Dr. Phil Schneider, is one of the greatest human beings on the planet. No bias. You can ask 10 people in the community. They can tell you what they think. Dr. Phil Schneider. And he's amazing, and he's influenced me deeply. Let me tell you about my mom, because we're on the eve of Mother's Day in America. So for all the moms out there, happy Mother's Day. I'll be the first one to tell you. And for my mom, and for all the want to be moms, you should have that experience in the right time. And for those of you that are not moms and not on that path, that's okay too. But all of us were born to a mother, and today I have gratitude to the moms. So here's my mom. My mom taught me the following. She taught me try harder, do a bit better, find what you have and give it, use it to help someone who's a little less privileged than you are. I grew up in a home where my mom, she was a social worker working with young people in the Bronx Children's Psychiatric Juvenile Delinquents System. She was a social worker working with kids that were definitely on the wrong side of the tracks, and she was the one that would try to meet them where they were at with decency and see them as who they really could be. Not who they were, but who they could be, and to try to help them get their lives back on track. She retired many years ago, but she volunteers tirelessly. She has adopted, so to speak, a family from Costa Rica that has a child with a very rare syndrome, and when they come to New York, they stay in my parents' home, and my parents would take them to the treatments and do the translation. My mother learned Spanish in order to help this family. My mother, in more recent years, adopted a young Dominican American boy from the other side of the Bronx near Yankee Stadium, where she originally grew up. And this kid has some learning differences, and his parents don't know how to work the system. His parents don't know how to get the best help. His parents don't know how to get him into the right schools. So my mom has him over and plays games with him and tutors him and advocates for him and with him and with his family to get an IEP, to get services, to get school placement. This is my mom. My mom's life is about being a champion for others, about giving to others. She's always going through the closets, figuring out what she can give away to bring to the homeless shelter and to give away clothing that we have that we don't need, that someone else does. My mom cannot tolerate, she never has and never will, tolerate social injustice. She can't stand by when someone is passing up an opportunity to do something to help themselves. You know, if this family doesn't take advantage for their son an opportunity, my mom is going to jump on this father and be like, how could you let your kid not get this opportunity to get the math help? My mom, she gave me the genes. Her name is Jean, so that's kind of funny. She gave it to me in my genes. It's in my DNA. And then she raised me through her example of that emotional sensitivity and social attunement to really tune into people who find themselves on the other side of the circles we dance in, and maybe even look beyond at the people who aren't even in that circle. So I grew up with this activist spirit, and I was drawn to see what was, and I just couldn't look away, nor could I accept the status quo. And this created some trouble in school at times. I think I spent more time in the principal's office than the principal did, but I just couldn't tolerate injustice, and I wrestled with it and spent much of my private time, and I still do. And my inner space is consumed with workshopping and think tanking how we can do better. I think about it for myself, I drive my team crazy about it, and I invite others into that space of really thinking and believing there's a better something, and let's see how we can just inch our way to it. It's not a perfectionism, but it's definitely a driven feeling of trying to create more opportunity for more people, and for each of us, for me, with myself, for the people I have the privilege to work with, and for the people that we serve, to believe that there's something better that they can bring out of themselves, that I can bring out of myself, and really putting that on front stage, right out there, and creating more opportunities for people. So that's where I come from. That's my mom. So far, so good. Just give me a thumbs up if you're with me. Because little story time, okay? Like, stories are okay. I could be late at night. I don't want to put anyone to sleep. But I thought it'd be nice to just open up with this group. I was listening to the meetings earlier, and I decided to go a lot less formal. But I think this is really actually the kishkas, the real stuff. Now, the second thing is, you might want to know, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that very much. The second thing that was extremely formative for me, and this will be shorter than the share about my mom, and this is a good takeaway quote too. You know, I believe the problem is that too often we treat problems. What we need to do is treat people, not problems. Simple. It's so simple. Treat people, not problems. So for me in graduate school, my first externship was at the Christopher Ottilie Home for Children On their website, it says they care for adolescents with serious emotional needs and developmental disabilities. Now, forget about the lingo, whether you like the lingo or not, but picture a place where you basically have the kids that my mom was working with. They're institutionalized. They usually have one or two parents that are both in jail or in and out of jail. You never know what's going to set them off. There were these timeout rooms with like padded walls so that nobody would get killed. And at any moment, someone could just completely lose it, and that you needed to call in somebody with a bell that could physically restrain some of these very large, strong 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old young men and young women. Very, very intense. I don't know how I did it, but I fell in love with these kids. You know, I would just like see the tender kid that just wanted to be loved, just wanted to be seen, just wanted to be heard. And as they say, the kids that need the most love show it in the most annoying ways. You know, these kids just didn't know any better. They didn't know how to show it. But all they needed was a little bit of attention, to be seen, to be heard, to be given a voice. This was my training for trying to be a good therapist and champion for people who stutter. My second externship was at the American Institute for Stuttering, the late, great Catherine Montgomery. Fantastic. The most transformative experience for me was when I did the Subway Challenge. They had this thing called advertising, and you would go on the New York City subway, and the doors would close, and everybody was expected to kind of say, hi, pseudo stuttering your name through. My name is my name is my name is Uri in front of the whole subway car, and I really I did a thick one. Like I didn't go easy like I did in my grad school experience. And I will tell you that obviously I don't stutter, so I don't live with this. This was completely a one-off. But being in a closed subway car, as a person that I am, that's not particularly courageous, pretty sensitive, always wondering what other people are thinking, it was a schwitz. Keep going back for the Yiddish words. I sweat it. And I didn't get out of that subway car the same person I went in. I held my space with the feeling of all the eyes of every person on that subway car looking at me like, what a wacko, what a weirdo. These were the thoughts that I held my ground with, but I didn't bail out. I did this, and I just think I came out of that subway car, again, a much more refined, ready, empathic therapist than I was when I went in. And I credit the American Institute for that, among other things. But that was a very formative experience for me. And to see that I could do that, if you asked me beforehand if I was going to do it, I would have told you no way, I was going to bail out. But I pushed myself, and certainly the social experience of being in a group, it got me over a certain hump. And I think that's an important piece as well. The idea of community and groups, very, very important, because I couldn't have done that and wouldn't have done that alone. I would have had every excuse not to. And I don't stutter. So all the more so, I can only imagine. And my third externship was at a very prestigious hospital in Manhattan, the Lenox Hill Hospital, Manhattan Eye and Ear Throat Clinic, which was like where you had the best of the best ENTs dealing with people that had throat cancer, esophageal speech, and all sorts of humps and bumps. And Candida, for those that don't know what Candida is, feel free to look it up. Not my cup of tea. Bodily fluids, not my thing. I'm not the medical SLP. I'll refer those to Steph and others here. But yeah, but what I felt there was, again, people weren't treated as people. People were treated as problems. You'd read the chart, you'd talk to the chart, you'd talk to the diagnosis, you didn't talk to the people. And that stuck with me. I found it extremely stimulating. I found it extremely cool to be like rubbing shoulders and rubbing elbows with all these hotsy-totsy doctors. But there was something about the hospital setting, the medical setup, didn't work for me. So I tried to take all that wisdom and connections and access to these great minds and bring that into a much more human encounter. And then my first job was at the Summit School. I didn't know what I was going to do for my first job. My clinical fellowship was at the Summit School. I worked with 3rd to 8th graders with scattered learning profiles. If you don't know what a scattered learning profile is, it means that these kids couldn't succeed in a mainstream school, but they also didn't fit in a traditional special ed school. They were too smart for that, but not able to succeed in a general ed school. So these kids looked like this. 3rd through 8th grade. Some of them were math geniuses with social differences. Others were socially smooth operators, but dyslexic. Others were academically solid with an extra dose of impulsivity and creativity, surprisingly got into trouble with authority, quite often and quite by surprise. I always honored the professional boundaries and appropriateness, but when I left the school, these 3rd graders became 8th graders, and these 8th graders became high schoolers, then they became college students. So one of these 3rd graders, it's now 15 years later, he reaches out to me and he says, "Can we meet up?" So we met up and had a quick slice of pizza on the way to the subway in Manhattan, on the way to the train. I said, "Hey, Gabe, how you doing?" Hopefully he'll be on the podcast soon. I said, "Gabe, how you doing?" He says, "I'm good." And he said to me the following. He said, "My parents have resources. Thank God for that. Can you believe?" I said, "Hold on a second." He's at NYU. He's crushing it in real estate. He has an undergrad degree and a graduate degree, a wonderful relationship with someone that he hopes to maybe marry. He's doing very, very well, and he's a very disciplined, very good employee and so on. He says to me, "Can you believe it? Imagine if my parents listened to those people when I was in 2nd grade that said I would need to be living in an institution, that I would never be able to live independently, that I would never be able to do X, Y, and Z. Can you imagine if my parents listened to them?" And he was thinking, and he said to me, he says, "What about all those kids that don't have parents that were as tough as mine, or as smart as mine, or as privileged as mine, etc., etc." He's very grateful, but he's thinking about all those people on the other side. And I want all of you to get off tonight thinking about all the people that are not on this call. I want us all to feel good, but if we have any bandwidth, let's think about what about those other millions of people that aren't here. If you don't have that bandwidth, don't make that your mushagas. That's another Yiddish word. I'll take it. I'm on it. But if you have any bandwidth, that's what's really pumping me at night. So that's the background. Okay. Now I want to read you a letter that I think some of the SLPs here may have seen. I don't think most people did. This was a letter I dug up that I wrote in 2016. And I wrote this to our we have a little professional group of people that say, "I care about stuttering." And I just want to say on behalf of the profession, on the one hand, I want to apologize for all of the hurt and all of the disservice and all of the mistreatment and all of the reckless behavior that people with our credentials have said, have practiced, have imposed on people who stutter and on families, etc. And at the same time, I just want to say, none of the people in this room who are speech therapists who don't stutter are doing this out of any other reason than a genuine care and passion and devotion. Something in our hearts just pumps to do the work that we do. And we may make steps here and there, but show some grace and just know that our profession has something to offer. And there are hundreds of us that are looking to do good and looking to do right and looking to be champions. So that doesn't mean we excuse some of the garbage from the past and some of the stuff that's still going on. As Steph said, there's more work to be done, but just know, I think it's important that we have this reciprocity of mutual respect and grace for that. So we have this group. There are about 1,000 plus SLPs that say, "I want to be in this little group." It's through ASHA, through our professional organization. And someone wrote a letter there, and they were asking a question saying, "My patient is in tears. My 16-year-old patient is in tears because therapy is not working." And here's what I wrote back. Ashley, all names have been changed, by the way. And any names you hear, don't assume it's someone with that name. I tried hard to use names that wouldn't ring a bell. But none of the names here are real, so don't assume that anything. And there's nothing bad that's said about anybody. It's just don't assume anything. Okay? Goes like this. Ashley, I can almost feel your own tears on behalf of your client and what she expressed to you. In my humble opinion, I'll chime in. Number one, listen to this, everybody. Therapy doesn't work. It rarely or never does. I'll get to that in a second, what that means. But therapy doesn't work. Number two, we'll give some specific ideas. And number three, some emotional resonance. So number one, therapy doesn't work. People work. People change. Remember what I said at the beginning, everybody? Right? Don't treat problems, treat people. So also, therapy is not the answer. People are the answer. People seeking change, people that can be guides and facilitators of change, that stuff can work. Some therapy out of a book or downloaded off of the internet, that doesn't work. If a person finds it valuable and puts it to play and it works for them, fantastic. But people work and people change. Guess what else changes? Stuttering changes too. Sometimes because of the work people do. And almost always, regardless or even in spite of the work people do, stuttering changes. So therapy doesn't work. I find a lot of clients and friends, even myself, really feel that once we're in therapy, the therapy will do the work. You know, just being there, having appointments, doing some exercises. The expectation is that the therapist and the therapy will do the work. It should work. And then I'll be all better. No, therapy doesn't work. People work. And it's often hard work for people who stutter. And at times, the sweat and the pain of the work is more than the sweat and the pain of the status quo. And that's hard. And that realization and processing it and moving forward with whatever choice one makes can present with anger, depression, tears, grit, substance abuse, a whole bunch of behaviors that we need to tune into. So it's my belief as professionals, what can we do? We can't cure, we can't fix, we can't make it work. Same way we can't perform some operation or prescribe some magic pill. We can facilitate, support, align, accompany, encourage, suggest, be a champion, problem solve. We can be with them, celebrating and even shedding light, amplifying their successes. We can be with them in their tears and frustration. Sometimes because Uncle so-and-so was unkind, or classmates were mean, or therapy isn't working. Of course, we should broaden our own set of skills and resources so we can share the most fitting resources with them. This includes multiple therapeutic approaches and speech communication skills. You mentioned some easy onset, or this person mentioned that, and there are more. What I mean to say, parentheses, we need to have a wide tool belt and to know what to lean on at different times. I was trying not to hit the person over the head, so I was making space for easy onsets. It's not necessarily my go-to. It's on my tool belt, but not one that I use in recent memory. In addition to the tools we need to be tuned into would be tools of self-help, the use of media. Here are some examples, but not limited to. And again, this is 2016. There's so much more. NSA, Say, Friends, Stutter Social, Stutter Talk, Stuttering is Cool. Movies like Transcending Stuttering, Going with the Flow, The Way We Talk by Mike Turner, This is Stuttering by Morgan Lott. Books like Out With It by Catherine Preston, Stuttering is Cool by Daniele Rossi, The Gift of Stuttering by Mo Mernick, so on and so forth. Online videos, people talking about their stuttering. Not only the Joe Bidens and Emily Blunts, this was 2016, who don't appear to stutter anymore, but have videos of young people and adults who stutter, people like Catherine Preston, Sophie Gustafsson. She gave an acceptance speech. She was a professional golfer. Rebecca Klein giving her gala speech at the Say fundraiser. The series My Stutter, on say.org, and so many more. So those are my suggestions about how therapy doesn't work, people work. That was part one. So far, so good. Want to hear part two? Part two, specific ideas. I like so-and-so's reply, and I'll add a few of my own. I would caution any quick choice of a program or any one approach per se. That decision should be made after you know what's out there, and then you determine what you think is the best fit for this girl at this stage. Because what happened was, parentheses, and this I want to really say strongly, the most upsetting thing that I see in the online forums for the stuttering community is therapists or people who stutter or family members taking their experiences and, I'm going to say, recklessly projecting that as the right move for someone who's presenting a dilemma or a problem. I don't think it's wrong for anyone to share their experience, but I think, and I know, I can tell you that I know that it can be very harmful for the wrong person to go down that door, that path, even though it was fantastic for 100 other people, but it was obvious it wasn't going to be right for the 16-year-old girl who's not ready to do XYZ. And that 16-year-old girl is only going to have more bruises and more pain because her mom got that response on that forum. So I just want to invite everybody to think about how do we create a more tender culture in the way we suggest things or poo-poo things or, say it's got to be this way or never should be that way. Just putting that out there, a little provocative, but I feel very strongly about it, and I've seen a lot of harm that's come from it. So just sharing that. So even in our professional community, obviously we see the same thing, and we need to be more cautious about that. It's as simple as I might suggest that my experience was great XYZ, or in my experience that wasn't helpful for XYZ reasons. That's great. But too often in the public space and in the private space, and I'm telling you because I know this, there's a degree of, and it's so ironic, and I'm going to stop after I say this because I can go on and on. There's a degree of even shaming and bullying people who are considering going down a certain path because that's not the path that someone or some group of people don't feel is legitimate or correct. I think we really need to think about, especially in the support groups and support spaces, that people are met where they're at with open arms, open ears, and twice the listening and half the talking. And the comments can be very supportive with when less is said. Okay, I'll get off that. So I gave this person a bunch of suggestions, some of which were mentioned earlier. I'll share this one. I think you'll like it. Include some counseling, whether it's CBT, ART, or other alphabet soup, is a crucial element. Finding a way to deal with the normal feelings in response to the not normal speech communication experiences. Being a 16-year-old girl who stutters. Now, again, I'm not calling stuttering not normal. What I'm trying to say is a typical 16-year-old girl. Some of us may have been 16-year-old girls, not me. Some of us may have been 16-year-old boys. Going through anything that's different can be really hard. You don't have to be someone who has anxiety or depression. It doesn't mean you need to see a psychologist. It would be wonderful if more speech therapists could talk about feelings, could work through feelings, could help people feel okay in their own skin. That's so important. So that was what I was telling this therapist to really learn more about and bring into the therapy. Ask this person her dream. Maybe she could speak it out. Maybe she could write it in a journal that you buy for her. Maybe you could draw a picture. Maybe you could sing or compose a song. Whatever it is, just listen really well. And for the last bullet, try to delineate different things she wishes to do. Ask her to make a list. What are some things she would do tomorrow if she didn't stutter? And let her flesh out that dream so it gets past the I won't stutter tomorrow. Okay, and then what might you do? Because the stutter sometimes, for some people, is this glass wall. It's like the wall in front of the Wizard of Oz. And sometimes we just need to take the wall down and see, okay, let's say there is or isn't a stutter. What's your promised land? What are your dreams? And I think, as Parker Mantell says, the greatest casualty is not failure, but the dreams that have been stamped out, the thoughts and the imagination that's been dampened and not even given oxygen. Yeah. We went through this list, okay, and then I said, ask the girl, when you have that list, what would be some of the easiest easiest things on the list? What would be some of the hardest things on the list? So I gave this therapist some ideas. Then empathic resonance, I gave the therapist some suggestions, including a talk by David Resnick on empathic resonance. I suggested events like the NSA. I suggested that she consider meeting other 16 to 20-year-olds, women who stutter. It could be very helpful, and that professionals can't do it ourselves. I mentioned that I have a 16-year-old girl that I know would be a great mentor. I said the 16-year-old girl cried many times, like 20 appointments. She just cried, and it was really hard. I cried too. And later I asked her, in hindsight, after we went through that whole journey together, what would you have liked me to do or to have said? She said, you did the right thing. There was nothing that you could say or do that would make me feel better. It was awkward at the moment, but it was the best for me that you just understood me and my stuttering, because no one else does. It took her 2 years. The frequency of therapy was not frequent. She came when she wanted, after the first series of weekly appointments. And then this 16-year-old princess, trapped in the muted mouth of her fear and shame, insisted that I make her make a phone call. I said, I promised you at the beginning I would never, ever make you do anything. But I know you can do it. How can I help you? And she came to that appointment and she made the phone call. And then after she made that phone call that she chose to make, she raised her hand. Both were a first in 16 years. And then came her AP research project. She chose the topic of stuttering. She presented the topic of stuttering. So I encourage this therapist, just hang in there. It can't hurt by listening and being patient. Other things can be very hurtful. First and foremost, the Hippocratic oath of every person in healthcare is do no harm. Make sure you don't do harm. Don't suggest things that could be harmful. And in the words of the late, great Dr. Joel Stark, my mentor from Queens College, she said, every person you work with, you gotta love them. If you don't love them, get out of there. So care about her and love her up, and obviously in an appropriate way, but to really care sincerely and deeply about every person that you work with. And if you don't have a way to, if you are the person receiving care and you don't feel the person, the professional, is caring about you, probably something missing there, probably, right? And if you're a professional, or if you're a parent, or if you're a teacher, if you're a coach, that's something that is such a key to open up change.